Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the PBSE podcast. Mark Castleman, Steve Moore. This is episode 298. What is keeping me in my marriage? Now that title might be a little bit deceiving because you would assume that that came from a betrayed partner.
Yeah.
This actually came from an addict in recovery.
In fact, we actually, a few podcast episodes back, we actually answered a question similar to this, but very different because it was a whole different set of concerns, and it was actually from a partner.
That's my partner asking, do I go or stay?
Yeah.
This is not the same thing at all. So
really good submission. I'm really excited for this episode, honestly.
I'm gonna read what this addict sent in because it's very vulnerable. It's very raw. He says, I love the real talk in your podcast. Thank you. I'm an addict in recovery from porn addiction and betrayal of my partner. I'm trying to navigate in this time between discovery day and full therapeutic disclosure. And we've been at this here for all this for about 3.5 months. So there was discovery day of all of his, addiction behavior started to come out. Now they're preparing for the actual formal disclosure process. And there's the gap between those two events. So my spouse, right, the betrayed partner, has brought up a question to me that I feel as an addict that I don't really have the ability to answer fully and truthfully. Since sex addicts have an intimacy disorder, and since I've been found to have dismissive avoidant tendencies and attachment trauma, how do I know that reconciliation with my spouse is truly what I want if I've never been able to really receive or give, quote, true love, or feel truly intimately connected with my wife? Am I staying because, quote, I should, because society says so, because I have 16 years invested in our relationship, because we have young kids together, because of fear of living alone, because of fear of being outed to all our friends and family as a betrayer, because I'm currently in a state of panic over my situation, and because I would feel like an absolute and utter failure if reconciliation fails? What if we go down the path to reconcile and I get further along in my recovery and I find it's not truly in my nature to actually be a willingly vulnerable and present husband and father and change my mind? How do I know if when I'm, quote, recovered, that she'll be the right, quote, fit for me? And that I want to still be there for her 2 years, 5 years, 10, 20 down the road? I can't predict the future, and I truly don't know. And her asking the questions, or these questions, has introduced so much doubt. Do you have any insights from your own recovery that you could share? Wow. That's really vulnerable. That's a lot of guys think these things, but don't dare say them.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and why don't we say them, right? I think oftentimes for addicts, and sometimes this is perpetuated by partners because of the shame they carry, and just because of, we're the instigator or the betrayer or whatever moniker fits best in your particular situation. There is that popular propensity that if I'm the betrayer, that now means that my wants and needs going forward are either forfeit entirely or at least secondary, right? To what anyone
And
else
I've already
wants.
caused so much harm to my partner. If I bring this stuff up, that's just gonna pile, bad onto worse. Right? I can't bring this up. I just need to go into full cooperation mode at this point. And
Yeah.
there's legitimacy to feeling that way. I had a lot of fear-based reasons for being in recovery in the early to even to the mid stages, to tell you the truth.
Mhm.
There was a lot of shoulds. I should have done this. I should have done that. I should be doing this. I was, of course, crazy panicked that my wife was going to leave me. The night that I talk about when she said, we have 5 sons. She said, "I'm tired of raising 6 boys. I need a man." Right. And she was just so done. I was worried about our kids. I was crazy worried about my reputation. I mean, big time, because I lived life to make sure that others thought well of me, others were pleased with me. I was putting on the right facade, and man, I thought all that was going to be gone. Mark was going to be exposed in his rawness, right? I had a fear that I would get into recovery and it would just fail. I'd get,
Yeah.
3 months, 6 months, a year in, and I would just go back to being a loser addict after all the effort. That was all very dominant, right? And what if I find out when I get truly healthy that what if I don't even love my wife? What if I'm really not all that excited about this relationship after all this effort?
Yeah.
I
But
experienced all that.
well, and those things can be fueled, I think, by real time experience, right? I mean, we've both worked with partners or addicts and partners over time where, for example, during heated or fear-based discussions, partners will oftentimes either say outright, accuse, or at least question, you're just in it for the sex, aren't you?
Uh-huh.
And oftentimes I think that not that that is the only cause of that, but when we have discussions like that, when a guy starts practicing mindfulness for the first time, it makes sense to ask again, those are very unpopular and things that we hesitate to voice out loud. But was I? Did I just get into it for the sex? Was I just here for that? And now that
Have
I'm
you,
going to be healthy and balanced, am I going to want to stay? Right?
yeah, do you just
My,
feel obligated to me because we've been married all these years and now we have kids? Is that
yeah.
am I an obligation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so lots of great points. And as he indicates here, there is a lot here. He says they've been married for 16 years, right? They have young kids together. There's a lot to this. And I love how he's also vulnerable about that fear of just living alone. That's a really also popular, again, a very common, but not popular in terms of sharing fear,
Yes.
right? And both for addicts and partners. We hear that one oftentimes from both.
Mhm.
They don't want to be that vulnerable or that open because they're scared it's going to be misconstrued. But am I staying because I want to? Or am I just staying because I'm scared of not being with somebody?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and everything you're talking about, if we kind of normalize this, I'm hearing in everything that what he's saying and what we've just shared, Steve, these are normal survival responses,
Mm-hmm.
right? As addicts, what have we learned to do? We have learned to avoid the hard. We have learned to escape and run and self-medicate and self-soothe when life hits us. This stuff is crazy. And right. And so the addict survival mindset's going to come in with all these fears, all these doubts, all these what ifs, right? What if, what if, what if? This is all natural survival sort of addict mindset that he's describing. I would expect this, right?
Mm.
None of this means that he doesn't love his partner or that they're not compatible. None of this means that.
Mm.
I hear panic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, and to be fair, there is a lot of kind of, I mean, in 12 step, it's oftentimes referred to as there is a lot of future tripping going on here,
Future tripping. Boy, oh
right?
boy, yes.
Well, and I think that there's a couple of things to say here. I think that, well, and if I was this guy, and he actually says this in here, right? There would be that question of, do I love her? I'll put it this way. A guy who's asking these kinds of questions in recovery and thinking less about just himself and living in the moment and what do I want in the next hour or the next whatever and is looking at this, even though some of these fears need to be better regulated, and we're going to talk about that. I mean, he's looking at it through the lens of what he should have been looking at it, and I would argue a more loving lens than ever before, right? Because I hear it in the language. There are two lives. There are multiple lives on the line here. Me, my wife, my kids. I don't want to screw up, make the wrong decision, and then waffle on it later,
Well, isn't it
right?
crazy? As you were just saying that, I thought we go from being so hunkered down in our isolated addict mindset,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Me, 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 me. he's actually starting to think in terms of we, us. And his brain is so unaccustomed to it that it's throwing him for a loop. Like, is this,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, is this like what's happening here? And all this stuff is coming up. I really hear him moving into the place of love, of we, not just me. And in some ways, it's unfamiliar territory.
Yes.
He says, I've suffered from attachment trauma. I've had dismissive avoidant tendencies. Those are all very isolating. He's starting to come out of that shell and it's really uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, can't, completely agree. Could not agree more. So we really applaud this guy with whatever ends up being the decision or where you're going to go or where the relationship goes. Clearly, there's been a lot of growth, which is huge. And I could totally understand why a partner listening to this episode this might elicit a lot of fear from them initially. Hell, even if his partner were listening, right? Don't tell him that. Don't tell him, maybe it won't. But what's happening here is he's contemplatively facing, possible long-term outcomes and possibilities. And that is a huge leap in maturity, I think, for most of us men who struggle in this addiction.
And one of the things that we kind of put in our pre-broadcast notes was how do I want to say this? As we start to put down masks and doing everything for everyone else and what we should do and how we're perceived and blah 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 blah, we actually move from shoulds, which can masquerade as love. We start to move out of the shoulds and we start to move into our actual authentic selves, which is where the real love resides in us. And that can be a tough transition because
For
we've done
sure.
everything because you should,
Yeah.
right? For appearance, for my reputation, for being liked, for being safe, for being okay. Now I'm starting to put those shoulds aside. And now I'm in the place of, do I really want this? Do I really love this woman? Is this the life
Yeah.
I really want to engage with? That's pretty
Yes.
uncomfortable to make that transition.
Well, and just so everyone knows, because this guy, he's writing in, he's clearly thinking about this. Panic is never a good place to make decisions like this from, like
Great.
ever, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure no addict or partner listening to this podcast has ever experienced panic except for Mark and I. So, since you're all very foreign to it,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it just like you probably are. But that's we all tend to have a tendency to be reactive either in trauma or around self-worth, self-esteem, value, trauma related issues. And it's totally normal. But if a decision like this is right today, it's going to be right tomorrow.
Well,
Right.
we actually have
Um,
you and I, Steve, have kind of used a benchmark in our clinical practices. We tell people when you're in the midst of recovery and healing and all of this difficult stuff, we recommend not making life altering decisions for at least 12 months.
yeah. Now there are exceptions to that, to be
Are,
clear. Certain
are,
forms of abuse and things obviously
huh?
necessitate a need for safety immediately and whatnot.
Yes,
But outside of those exceptions, yeah. I mean, if it's something that there's a good chance you may want to keep, or even a fair chance, it's much easier to see that through and see where it lands. I think the key with that though too is being there's a need for transparency in a coupleship when these things occur. And I don't know where this addict and partner are, obviously in their own dialogue, but I hope if he hasn't shared some of these fears with his wife already, I hope that he'll find a place in a forum and a way to do that in a way that's authentic. Because in my experience, obviously these kinds of discussions can be very charged and they can be very scary.
very
But
much.
some of the best discussions my wife and I have had is when we got this real, right? It's just I distinctly remember one discussion after a really bad fight where we were kind of on the brink, but nobody was really saying it. And I looked at my wife and I said, I'm honestly just terrified we're not making it to Christmas. I think it was October at the time.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know if we're gonna like see next year together. And she broke down and shared the same thing. And we just sat there and hugged each other, crying, really with only one thing to connect on, and that was our unsurety, very much along the line of what this guy is describing.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna make it.
Yep. And you wouldn't think of it that way, but that is a place for connection.
It is. Absolutely.
It's a
Because
place
we're
for,
bringing those feelings and emotions that nobody is speaking to the forefront.
mm-hmm. Hey, everybody. PBSE podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that. Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
There was another, this really hit home with me, what he shared, this intimacy disorder that he may have been diagnosed with or self-diagnosed, issues with attachment trauma. I've experienced those and a lot more. I've shared sometime on the podcast, I had a pretty tough upbringing, a lot of mental health issues that I struggled with, and my whole family was a mental health grab bag of issues. I had a ton of those. And what happened to me is I started to become confused in my intimacy disorder, my difficulty with vulnerability, my not trusting to even open up at all. I started to confuse that with whether I had the ability to love others at all. Mm-hmm. And it can be really tough when mental illness comes into the picture, childhood abuses and traumas, all this stuff that we have dealt with the best we can. You start to wonder if you're a regular, normal human being that can love at all. And it took me years to sift through all that with professional help and, being vulnerable, where I realized I'd been a lover my whole life, but it just got squashed and pressed down and covered over and camouflaged. But I realized I've been a lover or wanting to love people from as far back as I can remember, but it wasn't safe to do it. I didn't know how to do it. There were people around me that had their own issues. So it's important not to confuse these mental health issues with whether we can love or whether we have an ability to love. So that's important to point out.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Well, there's a lot to cover here, and this is obviously a podcast. There's only so much we can do in a podcast. Only there were a way where you could have interactive discussions with Mark and Steve more in depth about these things, along with others struggling. Well, there is. There is a place where
Hmm.
you can do that. Our Dare to Connect program for addict spouses and couples, guys. We hope that if you haven't had the chance to, that you will take advantage of the 2 week free trial going on there to see if the D2C program is a right fit for you. With over 30 hours of content every month, live interactive engagement with us, self study courses in our advanced courses in our D2C Academy, a live online dialogue forum that's coming online here in the next little while, and so many other things. If you like the podcast, you will absolutely love Dare to Connect. Come see what all the fuss is about it and grab that trial at daretoconnectnow.com.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about this. Where do we go from here? Right? We've
Well, I,
talked about
I
the.
was, I
Go
was,
ahead.
there's a couple's lens here because she says something really important.
Yeah.
You and I talk about, quote, hidden messages all the time. We don't really say what we mean. We don't know how to say it, or it's not safe to say it. But we always ask, what's under this? What's under these words? And one of the things she's been asking him is, do you really want me? Do you really want me? Is this just out
Yeah.
of obligation? Is just because we've just been married for so many years and we got kids? What is under that statement for her? And when Steve, when you and I work with betrayed partners, we find that when she says, "Do you really want me?" That's about her asking questions about safety and
Yeah.
clarity and where he's really at, and asking him to show himself so she can know him. It's not really asking him, pressuring him to predict the future. Like,
Yeah.
where are we? Where are you? Right? Are we safe? Am I desired? Do you want me?
Yeah.
Right? And when I hear a question, do you really want me? What I hear is a bid for connection, a bid for to let's come closer together and really talk about this.
For sure.
It's not a rejection. It's not a shaming thing. It's I want to get close to you. So I
Yeah.
encourage him to see that question for what it is.
Hmm. Well, and that's a great kind of segue as we shift to move forward. And I think part of the answer to that question, honestly, is part of the healing part of this, right? Because it's understandable for a partner to ask that. And I think that when we're in these relationships and we're doing this recovery process and we've been doing it a long time, and especially when your most significant relationship in some time, if not maybe ever, from an intimacy perspective, is going through something like this, it can be very difficult to compare the struggles that a couple in this situation is facing versus, quote unquote normies, right? Because the reality is that, recovery and the mindfulness that comes with it, along with the trauma and everything else, it causes us or forces us to face truths and realities that every relationship in some respects operates under, but people don't think about. So, like, for example, relationships free of addiction sometimes fail, right? One partner or another in a relationship through nothing to do with addiction or anything of the kind have affairs, right? These are the kinds of things that really do happen, and there's obviously reasons behind that. But one reality that is a scary but necessary truth to embrace it and accept when we go through this is that when it comes to relationships, nobody's a mind reader, right? And nobody's a fortune teller. We can't predict the future. There's no way to know what is coming down the road. My life history is particularly true with that, right? People come into one's life and then unexpectedly they may go away. Now, sometimes that's because of betrayal, but it could be anything, right? My dad got on a plane one day when I was 13 to go on a business trip, just like he did every 2 weeks, and he just never came back. And so when it comes to relationships, I think it's important that we learn to come to a place progressively where we can face these fears and then address these kinds of fears through the lens of acceptance of those things. So for example, let's say I'm this guy, right? And we listen to this podcast, my wife and I together, and she comes out and just says what Mark described. So do you really want me? Do you want to stay in this forever? What do you say, guys? You're all you're fully on the spot. Spotlight's right on you, right? What do you say? I can tell you what I would have been pressured to say in the past. Of course. Of course I do. And of course I'm never going anywhere. And of course, whatever. But what would I say if I'm being honest at this stage? I can tell you right now that I want to pursue this relationship and that I see a future for us as far as I'm able to. I do have a lot of fears and a lot of hesitations and a lot of uncertainties, but I am doing everything I can to figure that out. And I am committed and I'm doing everything I can to be committed to you, to this relationship, and to discovering who I am and really and what I really want, just like you are. And I'm glad you're bringing that up because I think we should keep that dialogue going.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
probably the much better answer. That doesn't match up with The Notebook or any other romantic comedy you're going to watch. But
Well,
is
and
that not the more honest answer?
sitting where I am now, if I were to go back to those fears, many years ago, what would I say in that my early self's shoes, knowing what I know now?
Mm,
My vulnerable state would be something like, you know what? I've suffered with a lot of detachment, a lot of isolation. I've not been very good at being open or connecting. I'm just beginning to learn about my true self, my healthy self. And I really want to work on this.
mm,
I really want to get close to you. I really want to get to know you and let you get to know me. And I feel like I'm just coming through that doorway and it's really terrifying.
mhm,
But I want you to know that my desire is really strong to continue on this path, right? Just
mhm.
putting it right out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we keep talking about it, right? Now, again, these are questions that relationships who don't experience the kinds of things that a relationship who goes through these things might think about or question. But again, relationships, there's nothing that guarantees anything. All we can do is try to pursue our authenticity right now. I mean, Brittany and I had a conversation about this maybe a year or two ago, something along these lines. And what we concluded is that I mean, I have been pursuing this relationship now for 20 years, 10 of those in recovery. And I feel like I want to be here more and more, not less and less.
Mm,
Right. And so
yeah,
I anticipate that will, as I continue to pursue my authenticity, that will continue to stay the same, if not keep growing. And
yeah,
so that's what I would anticipate. I can't offer guarantees, right? But I can tell you that I have never found anything more rewarding, and I have no desire to find anything else.
yeah.
So there you
Well,
go.
and it's also understandable from what he describes about his struggles of the past and her, with all the betrayal, him with all the addiction. It's normal for the survival brain to say, I need to know where we're going to be 20 years from now.
Yes.
I need to know that. And it's a very normal thing to struggle with that. But, Steve, you and I talk all the time in Dare to Connect and in our clinical worlds about living in the next right step or the next right thing.
Yeah.
That's all I can focus on. Do we have a vision? Do we have goals? Do we have desires? Yes. But the only thing we have any control over is what is the next right thing from in this next moment. And moving yourself back into that presence, back into that current space, right? And to continue dialoguing, continue talking, right? So important. So important.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so where do we go from here, right?
Uh,
That's the question that is before us, right? And that isn't just for the addict, by the way. That's also for the partner.
Very much
We
so.
don't know if she's going to be listening to this, um, but we hope that she does, and that she is able to also vocalize more clearly, kind of where she's at, what she's thinking and feeling. Relationships are a risk. That's a fundamental truth we talk about oftentimes in Dare to Connect for a lot of reasons, right? Intimacy is a risk. The more we put ourselves out there in a relationship, the more it does open up the door for connection, but the more it also opens up the door for potential rejection. And exploring what is authentic to us and not is a journey. And I love this guy's transparency about this. I do have one more thought for him. about that. What the research shows, what Mark and I's experience shows in this world where you're kind of questioning, am I going to want to stay in this relationship? We can't offer guarantees about that, but we do know that people come into this world wired for connection. We do not come here wired for disconnection. Disconnection is a learned response.
That's right.
It's not something we come wired for. We come wired for vulnerability and transparency and shame free. All those things that are
Yeah,
opposites of that
yeah.
are things we pick up along the way.
You could say we come wired for all that connection, that tenderness, that compassion, that collaboration. We get unwired. We get unwired from all that through life. The good news for this guy and for his partner, if they both will simply commit to continue on the path of recovery and healing, what will happen? They will return to that which is healthy and normal for them. They will return to the way they began, wired for connection, love, commitment, collaboration. All of that is their natural state. And the more you're in recovery and healing, the more you will move toward that.
Yeah.
That I do guarantee. You're headed back to your true state, your authentic place, your true self.
Absolutely.
Stay on those paths. You will go to that place more and more.
And it's okay not to have all the answers right now.
Mm-mm.
Right? That is none of us do. Right? That's the reality. We walk by faith in this process. We walk one step at a time. And like Mark said, we pursue our next right thing. And we do it as transparently and connectively with our person as possible.
And I would
So
encourage her to find her voice progressively. I know it's probably been difficult with this history, to really getting in tune with what it is that she actually authentically wants and needs that are under these feelings and under these, these expressions of fear and doubt and wondering. What are the actual wants and needs, and how can those be expressed in how we're living our relationship right now today?
yeah.
What are his capacities to be able to meet those? Maybe it's a gradual process. Maybe it's give me one thing that I can do today to meet your needs, and I promise you I'll keep working on it. Right? But that honest sharing and expression is such a critical part of this.
For sure. Well, guys, thank you as always for letting us into your house and home. We appreciate you tuning in each week. We're so close to episode 300. As my dad used to say, we could spit on it. Um, it's coming up here in just a couple of weeks, so we're looking forward to that. And you guys make it possible. If you would like to, again, we'll throw out the invite. Please come and join us and Dare to Connect. If you like the podcast, you'll love that. Grab your 2-week trial at daretoconnectnow.com. Or if you would like to send in a submission to the podcast, you can always do that by going to the same site, daretoconnectnow.com. Up at the top, there's the PBSE podcast logo. Go ahead and click on that. And the bottom of that page is the contact form where you can send us in questions. We're pacing between, I think, 6 and 8 weeks or so behind submissions versus podcast episodes. So it is a bit of a time delay. Unless you want to come get that help tomorrow, daretoconnect.com. But otherwise, please feel free to send those into us and we'll get them addressed.
Yeah. Thanks for being here with us. Love and appreciate all of you. And we'll catch you next time on PBSE.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.